Hello, I am back for another research update. So I am staying on track with looking into these adult learning frameworks. The last video, I talked about Kolb's, if I'm not mistaken, yes, Kolb's four stages of learning. And I ended that video and said that I'm going to now explore situated learning. Before I dive into situated learning, just one quick, I don't know, caveat, note. I'll say note. Um, I've chosen four adult learning frameworks. There's actually a lot more because what will happen is someone is researching, they will be looking into one framework and they may, be studying it. And as they learn and grow in their profession and their discipline, they may realize, oh, if you add this piece, this will, take this, this will address this framework will now address this particular situation. And so that happens. And then you have like frameworks that are built on frameworks or frameworks that are inspired by others, etc. So I just wanted to focus on these four to start. Like I said, I'm on a research journey. So I may find myself circling back to additional frameworks as I go down the path, but these are the four that I'm focusing on now. So I'm not saying that there are only four. These are just the four that I've chosen in this phase of my research. And so once I talked about Kolb's four stages of learning, the next one is situated learning. Which was interesting to me because it made me think of learning as it relates to a specific context. And then as I started to research, I found two really fantastic articles. One article, excuse me, and one chapter in a larger book. So I'm going to link to both of those down below. But let's dive right into situated learning. So situated learning, or otherwise known as SLT, so you may see it referred that way in other articles or texts. If you do some more research, you may see them refer to it as SLT. And it was first presented by Jean Lave and Etienne Wagner in 1991 in a paper that they did together, or it was presented, they co-presented this particular topic, this information. And SLT explains the process and development of learning when individuals have the opportunity to participate in a community of practice. That definition comes from a chapter in the Theoretical Models for Teaching and Research, which is an open text. Like I said, I will link to it down below. And the section on situated learning theory was authored by Sandra. I'm so sorry. I forgot to Google to pronounce the author's name correctly, but I will bring it back and I will double check it for the next video. But it's either Sandra or Sandra P. Mina Herrera. So again, I will look that up, and then in the next video, I will make sure that I reference it correctly. But this person authored this particular chapter about it, and that's where I pulled this definition. And so to define and describe, community of practice is just a group setting where the people who are learning this information are then allowed to exercise and take that information and implement it in a real world setting through guidance by being guided by people who are experts or more knowledgeable about the particular practice that they're in community of than they are. And so that really resonated with me because I think about my own personal professional journey and how I kind of hopped from different communities of practice throughout. And so what that means for me is like when I was in undergrad, I was a member of the Public Relations Student Society of America. So I got my undergraduate degree, which was a bachelor's of science in journalism with a concentration in public relations. And it was at FAMU. It was called at that time the School of Journalism, Media, and Graphic Arts. They have since condensed the name to the School of Journalism and I think Graphic Communication, but now let me look it up so I don't say it wrong. It's the School of Journalism and Graphic Communication. So they've tightened it up so that it, that's a lot more succinct. That definitely still explains what it is. And essentially, the journalism side of things We could either major in public relations, print journalism, which is newspaper, magazine journalism, or broadcast journalism. And so those were the four pillars of journalism or areas of focus there. And then on the graphic communication, or for me, that side of it, it's like photography, graphic design. I'm probably leaving out, I'm sure I'm leaving out some other ones. So I'm going to just pull their website up really quickly so I can reference it properly. But that is what we would, if I can find it quickly, that's what we could focus on there. Okay, so yeah, so really it's just graphic design, journalism, public relations, and then journalism as a minor. So that's how they probably break up the journalism with, like, you can do, broadcast journalism, you have print journalism, things like that. So they tightened it up and made it easier to talk about. But nonetheless, I did a PR, so my concentration was public relations, and so therefore I was in the Public Relations Student Society of America, which is the student version chapter, or the student segment, the student part of the Public Relations Society of America. I am losing words right now. And so our chapter at FAMU, when I was there, I'm not sure what they do now. I know they still do things. I just have been, out of that world for a while. But we would put on this thing called the Haunted Library, and we would do it at the Leon County Public Library, which was like the library that was right by FAMU, and it was a free event. We would get sponsors. We would work with the library. We would create the haunted library. Some of our members would participate by being being the scary thing, scaring people in the haunted library. We would do it for Halloween. It was for kids. It was a great time, and it was fantastic practical experience for me. About a part of public relations, which is event planning. We also had like a media relations element, because there was typically, media around it. It was a big community event that was put on by, one of the colleges in the city. Great experience for me. And so that's just one example. When I was in undergrad, when I graduated, like once I had gotten my master's, and then I was, working and just kind of wanting to continue to grow, I would first, I started going to like co-working places, because I realized that I wanted to be in community with other people who had entrepreneurial pursuits. And so I would be, they would have events and networking events, and they would talk about skills development and all of that. And that would be a great way to network, but also to be in community of practice and to be able to have real conversations with other people who wanted to be entrepreneurs. And then when I started participating in these things called hackathons, which essentially is when they're based in kind of the tech world, and it's just when a group of folks would come together to solve a problem. So you would, put your ideas and see how you would come up with the final solution. When I started going to them as a marketing person, I would go and have these conversations about people, and I'm like with groups of people that are coming up with these really cool ideas and concepts that they might want to bring to market. And so I was able to provide the marketing perspective, because it's like, well, this is, you have a great MVP here, which is minimum viable product, in kind of that world of, building your product development. And the minimum viable product is basically just like the most basic version of your product that you feel comfortable bringing to market. So it doesn't have as many bells and whistles, because you want to make sure that the market has an interest in your product. And so once you have your MVP, now you need to bring on someone who has a marketing expertise to help you figure out how to market it, because you have to get it in front of people who will be the audience, but you have to find out who the audience is by exposing it to the market. And so I would have those conversations when I would go to hackathons, and it really expanded kind of how I viewed how marketing would show up in just kind of the whole ecosystem of business. But a great opportunity to be in community of practice. And so this really resonated with me for that particular purpose. And I really appreciate, that this situated learning I figured it existed, but now I have language to describe the thing that I have experienced, but that I have also appreciated and thought that, you know, if you're in college or in trade school, you're in some type of educational, phase where you are preparing to go from either one career to another one, or being no career essentially, so being brand new to the workforce and then being a working professional. And that's kind of college, trade school, those training programs, those kind of happen in that they help bridge the gap. But in order for them to effectively bridge the gap, I think it's important to also have community of practice with your education. So having the opportunity to learn the practical how-to steps, what to do, how these should look, the best approach, but then putting people in real world scenarios where they can practice those skills, because that's how you learn and that's how you kind of get to be, when you show up to work. Because in some work settings, they do have a process of bringing on entry level employees who maybe have little to no experience, or like they've done some internships, but they haven't done the work on the full executive level of being a professional, so they need to have some training. And some companies have a process where they bring their entry level folks through them and like expose them to different departments, let them kind of work in different areas to see where they want to land. Now, of course, these are large organizations. And so a lot of organizations don't have the infrastructure, or the ability, the way that their work runs, they don't have the ability to do that in that way. And so if they're hiring you for entry level, it's like, okay, you're entry level, but you're at least amenable to being able to work within the structure that is work. And if you're not, you're going to struggle, because you have to work within that structure. You have to kind of allow yourself to be molded by the professional development that is necessary for you to be successful. Even if this applies across the board. You could be a straight A student, you could be a straight D student. Either way, both of you are going to have to understand how to exist within the structure that is work. And when you're in college, and really school kind of prepares you for it. So it prepares you for it in how you are structured when you're learning. So you have to get up in the morning and you basically work. You work in class all day. And I'm using finger quotes because it's like you work, but you're in class. So that's your job is to be a student, essentially, in this kind of scenario. You get up, you go to school, you come home, like you get into that structure. So then when you're in college, it's similar, but you may not do you don't do like 9 to 5 and I'm kind of in the building that entire time. You have a bit more freedom. You can create your schedule. You can, structure your schedule in a different way, which is why some people, if they don't adjust from high school to the way that college is structured, because they're different, they have a tough time doing well in college. Doesn't mean that the material is too tough for them. It doesn't necessarily mean any of that. That part of it, it could just be they have a tough time adjusting to the structure or the looser structure than what they had in high school. So, thinking about all of those things that you bring with you when you start working. And so some companies are big and they can bring you through some of that process. Some companies are small and expect you to have some level of working experience, some level of, professional ability to be in a professional setting. That's what they're kind of expecting of you, and they will teach you how to do the job. And so then you still have to learn how to adjust within those structures. And situated learning it provides that additional value on top of letting you practice what you're learning. You get to practice what you're learning, but you're also doing it within a structure. So you get to kind of feel what that structure feels like. Because, for example, say you are a really talented visual artist and you are hired by, say, a comic book company to create your visual art for publication. Now, this comic company puts out, I'm not speaking, this is very much a hypothetical, me just pulling things out of my mind, because I'm not familiar with how comic book companies publish as a whole to speak to it over like that. So I'm not. So I'm just throwing out, here's the sample. You are a creative visual artist. You're hired by this comic book company who wants to publish 16 comics in a year. And you are accustomed to creating, to spending a month, 2 months on a visual piece, or at least 2 weeks on a small visual piece. They want you to churn out multiple visual pieces on a very specific schedule because they have to get the book out. The comic book has to be done by a certain date, and it has to be done by the creative folks on who's building the comic and the story, so that they can put it together to give to the people who are going to now bind it or edit it, or the other creative folks who are going to color correct it, who are going to make sure that everything flows. And so there's a schedule. The visual artist may feel like this is disrespectful of my art, and you don't understand what it takes to create good work. But it's an award-winning comic book that is visually stunning and is really popular because of how beautiful it is. And so it's like, well, no, that's not true. The thing is that you have existed as the visual artist in your own structure of your own creation, or it might be what you were taught when you were in a program in school, to take this time to really like get into the art and really like make it your own and make sure you can do all the tweaks and things you want to do. But you have to learn how to do that within this structure. And that structure does not disrespect your work, but it does require your work to happen faster. How are you going to bridge that gap? You might not. And so that's why I'm thinking about situated learning. Like, I like that it will apply to, the college student who doesn't know anything necessarily about, say, working in a fast-paced financial services agency, but they want to. And so they may understand, okay, I know how to do, financial things, because I'm not going to try to guess about that, but I know how to do financial things, but can I do them in this setting where I have to move through this process and we have to be quick and they have to be accurate? And you have to adjust. So I really like situated learning. Essentially got went long tangent, but you see, this is something I'm passionate about, just kind of thinking about what is that process like? How do you know that, you have learned enough to be able to be in community of practice to continue the learning? Like, how do you know enough foundational information? What is too much foundational information? Like, those things, just kind of understanding how the learning happens once it is about professional development and less about what happens when you're under pedagogical guidelines, when you're just kind of going from, I don't know much about just general things, to now I know something about something. When you were younger, I'm talking about, you got some lived experience, some things, you have some information, but now how do you take it to implementing, to expanding it, etc. And so this is what my brain is swirling around. For sure. So let's talk about, what did I learn? I said some of this before, so I'm just going to kind of encapsulate this again. But again, situated learning, it really resonated with me because it describes that practical application that I've experienced in various stages of my own professional career. And I can definitely see the value of it when educating adults. Now, here are the two areas where I'm going to do some more thinking about this, but this is the areas that I'm most curious about. So one, what are all the different ways that it can show up for college students? And I'm saying college students, but I really mean college students, trade school students, like folks who are coming out of the K through 12 system. And like, what are some ways to bridge for them to kind of begin to make that shift from being in the school system and the way that's set up, to moving to the work system and the way that's set up? So that's what I'm thinking about. Like, here, what are those different ways that it can show up? So I'm saying college students, but really, I want to practice expanding the way that I talk about things to respect and honor and consider other lived experiences. Not everybody's going to college. I don't even personally think that everyone has to go to college. I do think, though, there needs to be a bridge from high school to work. There needs to be something in the middle there that helps to shore you up for that. It can be a trade program, it can be college, it can be a leadership development program, it can be an entry-level workforce development program, whatever it is, some type of bridge. And then I also am interested in how situated learning can show up at work. So I've heard of programs where people, like I said, at larger companies where like a group of entry level folks will come in and they will then, they will kind of float around the company and work in different departments. Everybody will kind of shift, and then you get to see where you want to land, what's most interested to you, and then that's what you actively pursue as you move on in your professional career with that company. But that takes resources and time, and some really big companies have that infrastructure. Smaller companies don't necessarily. So how else can this happen at work? What are some other ways that this can show up in different organizations of different sizes, of different structures, of different just the way that they do things? How can that look? So those are the two things that I'm most curious when I'm thinking about situated learning. So what is next? So I'm going to do my last adult learning framework as of now. Like I said, I may circle back to some in the future, but this is the last one I'm going to stop at before I move to the next thing that I want to research. And the next adult learning framework that I have here is called transformational learning. So I'm interested and excited to see what that is going to be about. Thank you for tuning into my research conversation video. If you have some thoughts about situated learning and want to chat below in the comments, feel free, share a comment. We can have a conversation. The article and chapter that I used to research this, I'm sharing it down below. Oh, you know what? I want to show you something. So I mentioned the article or the chapter in the theoretical models for teaching and research. There was another article that I found in the Northern Illinois University Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning, and it was just an article on their website about situated learning. This article, the Northern Illinois University, NIU, they give examples of situated learning activities like field trips where students can participate with whatever knowledge they have, but do it in an unfamiliar environment. They talk about, internships, cooperative learning, like how you can have folks like those programs I talked about a couple of times where people are working, but they're also learning how to exist within that community of practice. And so I think it does a really good job of explaining situated learning in really plain terms while also giving some examples of how you can use it. So whether you are a K through 12 teacher, you are a college instructor, college professor, or if you are an educator in the professional space, so you're a trainer, facilitator, whatever that is, I think you can use these classroom activities recommendations for how to introduce situated learning to whatever you teach. So I'm going to share the links to that below. And then I wanted to show just really quickly, I'm kind of bouncing back, but here is let me move myself so that I'm not in a weird place. So this is a model that's in that chapter by this author whose name I'm going to make sure to say properly in the next video. But I wanted to show this model because I thought that as someone who is I'm not a visual learner, I'm a words learner. So when I usually see graphs and charts, it definitely takes a minute for my brain to kind of wrap my mind around what's happening. When I saw this, I immediately could recognize what it is. And so this model of situated learning theory really just outlines how to build a community of practice. So if you don't have one and you're wondering how can you make one happen, if this resonates with you like it did with me, you can definitely use this. And so what I liked is, the exterior circle right outside of it is the context. That's the community. Or no, that's not, that's the practice. That's the content. That's the thing that brings you together as a group. Within the community of practice, it talks about making sure to have activities, artifacts, identities, and relationships identified, and not only just identified, but being clear about how they function within the community of practice, how they support the practice, and how they support the community of folks that are practicing, how all of these things do that. And then it shows you how the relationships should look. So you have the novice here and how the novice interacts with the experts, and there is an interaction and support that goes both ways, because when you're teaching someone something, you benefit because you learn by talking through it and breaking it down and explaining it. You get more clarity around the topic as well, or a deeper insight into the topic. However that shows up for you, you can benefit as the expert. And then as the novice learns and moves up in their knowledge towards expertise, then they become more of an expert. And when you're starting out as a novice, you're on the periphery. So you're on the edges of the context. And then as you get deeper in and closer to the center, you become more of an expert. Thought this was fantastic and how it just explains how to build a community of practice. So I definitely wanted to share that because it really resonated with me and I wanted to talk through it. But again, I am going to link to this down below so you can see both of the places where I did my research. And then now we're going to close on what I have coming up next, which is transformational learning. So again, as I said, I'm excited to talk about it. If you would like to chat about any of this that I talked about in this video, what I did kind of as an addendum, because I meant to talk about those and didn't want to skip them, definitely we can talk down below. If you know of better websites and other links to situated learning, share that down below. We can have a great conversation in the comments. And until then, I will see you in the next video.